Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Script to Screen podcast, where we delve into the spine-tingling world of horror cinema. Each week, we look at the scariest scenes, unmask the deeper meanings behind your favorite horror films, and explore the psychology of fear that keeps us coming back for more.
From script analysis to scene breakdowns, we'll be dissecting your favorite horror movies to see just what makes them tick. So whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or just starting to explore the genre, join us as we unravel the spine-tingling stories that haunt the silver screen.
Now, before we get into this week's film, Lee, how have you been? Have you watched anything good?
Well, let's see. I had a bit of a horror binge last week. Revisited some 80s classics with Ghoulies 1 and 2. I'd forgotten how much fun Ghoulies 2 is, to be honest. It's a bit of a blast. I also tried to fill in some gaps in my viewing history with Cannibal Holocaust and Zombie Flesh Eaters, which were both experiences, to say the least. And I was lucky enough to catch a really cool movie out of Ireland called Oddity, which is well worth the watch and definitely worth thingy. And reading-wise, totally off topic, I just started reading the new Transformers comics by Daniel Warren Johnson. And I know it's a bit off topic, but if you're a Transformers fan, they are amazing. I definitely recommend checking them out.
That does sound pretty good. Oddity sounds good as well. I haven't heard of that at all. So I'm totally in the dark on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's kind of I don't want to give away too many spoilers for it, but it's kind of like a slow burn, and there's some really nice setups in the beginning of the film that pay off really nicely later. But I don't want to kind of give away any spoilers. But yeah, definitely check it out. I highly recommend it.
That sounds awesome. I'll look out for that. Good stuff. Well, aside from watching, obviously, our movie of the week, I was lucky enough to catch a screening of Vertigo recently on 35mm. And it was this scratchy, kind of grainy print, which is always amazing. And it was put on by a local organization near me called Dirt in the Gate, who show, loads of amazing genre movies, all on film. And I also managed to watch Kafka by Steven Soderbergh, which, I thought was an absolute joy. Like I hadn't caught it before, but it stars Jeremy Irons, Teresa Russell, Joel Grey, and written by Lem Dobbs. And it's really worth kind of pointing out the photography of it was absolutely incredible. It was shot by a guy called Walt Lloyd in this amazing kind of black and white photography, and it was really a revelation. So that was fantastic.
Oh, that was it. Dirt in the Gate. That sounds amazing. There's quite a few.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Quite a few cool horror movies I wouldn't mind seeing on that old sort of film. Back to which, what's up for dissection this week?
Well, Lee, this week we'll be taking a look at what I think we can safely say is, for both of us, one of our favorite films. It is, of course, the 1987 classic, The Monster Squad. A group of monster-obsessed kids must band together to stop Dracula and his evil minions from taking over the world using a powerful, ancient amulet.
Nice. Written by Shane Black and Fred Dekker and directed by Dekker, The Monster Squad has deservedly achieved cult status and serves as a perfect gateway into horror for younger viewers. And we're going to be comparing what we see on screen with two different drafts of the script.
The first draft of the script weighs in at 113 pages. It's dated February the 15th, 1986, written by Shane Black, from a story by Fred Dekker.
And the third draft is a hefty 125 pages long and dated July 30th, 1986, written by Shane Black and Fred Dekker, from a story by Fred Dekker. And just to stress that, as always, these screenplays here are copyrighted to their original authors, and we are using them here purely for educational purposes.
So Shane Black, quite familiar name to those in the screenwriting world.
Absolutely. Black broke in with Lethal Weapon and quickly became known for his witty, fast-paced action scripts.
And he also starred, I believe, in Predator.
Indeed, he did. The story goes he was cast in the hopes he'd perform some rewrites in the script, and then when he didn't, his character was summarily killed off quite quickly.
Yeah, untimely death there, I feel. We should do Predator at some point as well, dude, I think.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, we digress. So let's unpack The Monster Squad. Okay then, Lee. We'll start by looking at the opening scene. In the first draft, this scene plays in black and white to replicate an old Universal classic before saturating, Wizard of Oz style, into widescreen colour. This has been omitted in the third draft, but I feel it would have made for a great opening because this film is really, in many ways, a love letter to those old Universal monster movies. And I thought this was great from the third draft when setting the scene, the script talks about Transylvania and alluding to both Black and Decker's love for those Universal monster movies. The script says, exterior, European countryside night. Ever been to Transylvania? Well, even if you haven't, it looks nothing like the creepy, rotting landscape before us. That's because this is Transylvania circa Universal Pictures 1931.
What
And
a great,
I think
yeah.
that shows it's amazing how, just they're wearing their influences on their sleeve,
Mm.
straight off the bat.
Absolutely. What a great visual that Wizard of Oz style opening would have been, though. I mean, the opening scene reads for 6 to 7 pages on both drafts before the titles drop. And the first thing that strikes you upon reading this is it's a really engaging script, which constantly invites the reader to participate.
Yeah, it's very Shane Black, isn't it? The opening of the film runs at around 6 minutes, but most of the stuff from the script has actually been removed. For example, Dracula transforms fully clothed while being naked in the script, and we don't see him again until later in the film.
And can we just talk Dracula for a second? Played by Duncan Regehr, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest interpretations of Dracula ever. There are so many little nuances in Regehr's performance. It just steals the screen every time he's on.
Absolutely, yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, whereas both drafts of the script feature a scene where Dracula is stalked by Van Helsing and his men, there is also a very entertaining scene with Van Helsing's henchman Carl and a swath of female vampires. I've heard this scene was shot but later cut from the film. Anyhow, for your listening pleasure, here is the scene in question. Exterior, Transylvanian countryside, same. Carl is still outside in the woods surrounding the castle, left to guard the wagons, grumbling, tossing gear into a carriage. Around him, the wind picks up. Clouds roll in. Dark, ominous. Lightning flickers, causing Carl to shiver, and as he turns, a female vampire strides calmly out of the woods, white, blood-spattered gown, fish-white skin, and dripping fangs. Carl gasps in shock and wastes no time. He grabs a crossbow, loads a wood stake, and fires. Glitch, one dead vampire, which would be swell if she'd been alone. She wasn't. Another vampire grabs Carl from behind. He screams, loads another stake, and bam, another one bites the dust. Except just then, lightning flashes yet again, and we see that he's surrounded by 3 more female vampires, moving in, circling. Ever had one of those days where there's just too darn many female vampires? He fires a stake. Bam! A vampire pitches over dead. Fires another. Bam! This is getting gross. Reaches for another stake. And guess what? There aren't any. Carl is slightly upset. He starts ripping open bags, ploughing through supplies, and the last vampire bride is practically on top of him. And where the heck did he leave those stakes, for Christ's sakes? And she's getting closer. So what does he do? He does what you or I would do. The only thing he can do, he reaches into the carriage and pulls the stake out of Dracula's corpse. Oops! Bam! The last female vampire hits the dirt, and Carl heaves a sigh of relief and leans back against the carriage. And that's when Dracula sits up right behind him, and we slam cut to...
Boom. It's a shame that was cut because it would have set the tone of the film perfectly, I think. But anyway, back to the movie. And Van Helsing is really stressing this poor German girl out. Maybe I think if he'd been a little bit more chill, things could have gone down a little differently. But anyhow, things quickly go sour. Van Helsing is sucked into the void, and we get, boom, the title drop.
So after the title drop, we're introduced to Patrick, played by Robbie Kiger or Kiger, and the film's young lead Sean, played by Andre Gower, in a scene that plays out largely like it's written with a few dialogue cuts. It ends the same way as both versions of the script, with Sean insisting monsters may be real. Gower would go on to star in a slew of 80s TV shows, including Knight Rider and TJ Hooker. But if you look at his body of work, he really continued, really continued to do a lot of horror. The next scene runs similar to the script. The film shows its age here a little bit with some homosexual slurs, which wouldn't wash these days. But they were kids in the 80s, and let's be real, kids in the 80s said that kind of stuff. The scene ends with the boys asking, "Where's Fat Kid?"
The aforementioned fat kid, aka Horace, quickly runs afoul of some local bullies, EJ and Derek. EJ is played by 80s staple asshole Jason Hervey, who you will no doubt recognize from The Wonder Years and many other things. After some more 80s gay bashing, EJ runs afoul of Fat Kid's pal Rudy, played by Ryan Lambert, and described in the script as a 13-year-old Mickey Rourke. It is worth mentioning that sadly, Brent Charlam, who played Horace, tragically passed away from pneumonia, aged 22.
So Sean and Patrick meet up with Sean's adorable little sister Phoebe, who seems way too young to be walking the streets alone. But hey, it's the 80s. In the first draft, she is 6. In the third draft, she's 8. But in the film, she's actually played by 5-year-old Ashley Bank, who really does an amazing job. We're also briefly introduced to the infamous scary German guy. They're then joined by Horace, who wants them to induct Rudy into the club. But first it's agreed he must pass the monster test. This scene plays out pretty identical to the third draft. In the first draft, the scene ends after Scary German Guy, and we jump straight to the cargo plane.
The cargo plane scene reintroduces us to Dracula as he retrieves Frankenstein's monster mid-flight. Now, the scripts both differ slightly here as Dracula enters the plane from the outside in bat form, whereas in the film itself, it kind of alludes to him being on the plane from the start.
Frank is played here by Tom Noonan, fresh from his iconic role in Manhunter. He actually turned down Near Dark to work on this film.
Ah, Near Dark, what a great film that is.
Mm.
All versions of the script and the film itself end with Dracula's cape landing near the Monster Squad treehouse, which I think is a really cool visual way to kind of tie everything together up until this point.
And just to say, the interaction between the two pilots in the cargo plane scene is an absolute blast. You've got David Preval, who most people know from The Sopranos, and Daryl Anderson, and they absolutely knock it out of the park. It's so much fun to see those two interact. So, post cargo plane shenanigans, we jump to the monster test. There's some variation on the script drafts here. In the first draft, the scene with Horace asking if Rudy can join is merged into the scene, and Phoebe is present before the test. There's some great foreshadowing here where Rudy insists there's only one way to kill a werewolf, and that's a silver bullet. One of the alternate suggestions just happens to be falling out of a window onto a bomb. And there's no prizes here, folks. The third draft plays out almost identically to the film. The scene with Rudy oogling Patrick's sister through binoculars plays out differently in each. This is also where we meet the final squad members, young Eugene, played by Michael Faustino, and Pete the dog, a charming beagle who does a great job, Lee. And we get the classic hands in the middle to square the deal, and Pete puts his paw in the middle. I mean, come on.
Pete is great. Pete is like he's the I was going to say the underdog. He's the underdog of the squad, isn't he?
It
Absolutely.
was brilliant.
Next up, Sean finds that his mom, Emily, played by 80s icon Mary Ellen Trainor, has picked up Abraham Van Helsing's journal at a yard sale. But sadly, the book is in German. And Trainor, as I'm sure you'll all know, also appeared in films like Lethal Weapon, Goonies, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future 2, Romancing the Stone, and Die Hard. And she was married at one point to Robert Zemeckis. Sadly, she passed away in May of 2015, age 62. The scripts both continue with a news report about a missing mummy, whereas in the film, we jump straight to
Dracula's badass hearse. And as he parks up on a hill overlooking the town and states, "Let it begin," lightning flashes. And for some unknown but totally awesome reason, we see his skull. This plays out identically a little later in both versions of the script.
I don't know about you, but I'm pegging this scene as the end of Act One. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, these things are always a little up for debate, aren't they? But definitely the introduction of the diary and Dracula's hearsing it into town move the story into a new phase. So yeah, I think it's probably about right. Yeah.
So back to Sean's house, and we have a really nice little interaction with his dad, Del Crenshaw, which plays out pretty much the same in both versions of the script. Del is played by Stephen Macht, who would go on to feature in General Hospital and Suits, among a long list of other roles. And there's a really cool little show don't tell moment where we see his gun and badge hanging on a bedpost. So, we know he's a cop now. You don't need to tell us.
The phone rings and we're introduced to Dell's partner Sapir at the police station. He's calling with some bad news, while in the background, a man begs to be locked up because he's a werewolf. Werewolf guy isn't present at this point in either script. Sapir is played by veteran actor Stan Shaw, who I was trying to place the other day, but then remembered I saw him in Harlem Nights, I think.
Oh, cool. We get a quick scene with Dell and Emily, which shows us there's some tension in the marriage as Dell abandons their marriage counseling for some good old-fashioned police work. Love it. This is largely as written in both versions of the script, except Emily smashes some plates in frustration after Dell leaves in both versions of the script. And as Sapir heads out to meet Dell, we have the crazy wolf guy freaks out and steals a cop's gun, demanding to be locked up. As we know by now, cops love their guns, so the guy is justifiably gunned down by a nervous rookie cop. The scripts both add a little extraneous dialogue here, but it mostly plays out pretty much the same as what we see on screen.
So at the museum, Sapir and Dell question a night watchman about a missing mummy. We end the scene with the line 2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves, which segues nicely into, you know it, mummy is limping off down a deserted street. An ambulance drives past, and we jump in as the desperate guy from the cop shop, now supporting some extra ventilation, wolfs out and dispatches the unwary driver. So we jump back to Sean, who's joined by his father on the roof of his house as they watch a drive-through movie in the distance. This is actually a really touching scene in the film, but it plays differently in the scripts. The rest of the squad are at the drive-through and they're streaming audio via walkie-talkie to Sean.
I quite like that. I think that was quite a cool touch, involving the rest of the squad. But I guess for time constraints, that's probably why they cut it. So this point in the third draft of the script, we have what is probably my favorite character name of all time when describing the drive-through movie, which is sorority girl with immense, oddly shaped breasts. Just classic. I mean,
ludicrous, isn't
it? Both scripts also have slight variations of this really cool Shane Blackish action line, which reads as follows. A big cat flies through the air screeching, because in these films, cats never just come out quietly purring. Oh no, they have to be fucking rockets and make elephant sounds. And yes, damn it, it does piss me off, because it is cheap, my friends.
So Shane Black, it's ridiculous. So next up, we have a brief scene with Sapir at the crashed ambulance. It seems another body is missing.
And then we jump into the heart of the swamp now. The Wolfman is met by Dracula and the Mummy. They make their way to the stagnant lake where the crate fell earlier. The crate is hefted from the deep by the monstrous Gill Man, not the creature from the Bat Lagoon at all. And Dracula uses his cane to conduct lightning into the crate and awake Frankenstein's monster. Now, a quick side note here. The special effects for the film were created by the legendary team at Stan Winston's studio, and notably the Gillman suit, which was crafted by Matt Rose and studio newcomer Steve Wang, who later would be known for his exceptional work on the live-action Guyver movies, became a landmark in creature costume design. Their impressive work on the Monster Squad led to Rose and Wang being tasked with creating a similar suit on short notice for a movie called Predator.
There we go. There are a few differences in the script here. In both drafts, Dracula never opens the crate. Instead, he rams his cane through it. There is also a cool shot of the Gillman snapping up flying bugs with a chameleon-like tongue. Take note of Dracula's cane here. This will play a significant part in the final battle in both screenplays, which differ from the movie.
So back to the Crenshaw house as Emily puts Phoebe to bed in a touching mother-daughter moment. Some confusion between the two leads us nicely into the next scene where Sean listens to his parents verbally tearing into one another. And it's here he spots a note next to the phone. Mr. Alucard is interested in purchasing the diary. Sean quickly decodes the anagram whilst his father screams about werewolves and mummies, and bing, the penny drops.
And this is largely identical to the third draft of the script. In the original, there's no note or anagram. Just hearing his father's words sets him on the path. The anagram scene comes later in the original script and is handled a little differently. There's a really fun scene next where Eugene tells his dad there's a monster in the closet. Of course there is, the mummy. But it quickly slips out of the window after Eugene's dad half-assedly checks the cupboard without actually looking in it.
In the third draft, this is followed by an amusing shot of Eugene's monster mags going in the trash. Whereas in the original draft, we are treated to a scene with the Wolfman throwing a garbage can through someone's window before we go to Eugene's house. It is, however, made apparent that Eugene lives across from the museum, and in the original script, Mummy is not present at Frankenstein's awakening. So this kind of plays into that slightly different continuity.
So the Monster Squad officially assembles under its new name in a scene that plays out identically to the third draft. Sean offers us a recap of where things are and where we stand in the story so far. He talks about the German diary, and in another nice bit of foreshadowing, Patrick remarks that his sister takes German in high school. We then move to the creepy house on Shadowbrook Road, where Dracula tasks Frank with retrieving Van Helsing's diary from the children. There's an almost imperceptible quiver of joy when Dracula tells the monster to kill them if they resist. Another great touch from Rhaegar here. This scene plays out identically in both drafts of the script. However, in the first draft, there are countless broken toys in Frank's room. So this is something which alludes to his kind of childlike nature, but also his dangerously kind of uncontrollable strength, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The squad decide to enlist Scary German Guy for help in a scene that plays out very closely to both drafts, sans some extraneous dialogue and a wandering mailman. Scary German Guy is, of course, played by Leonardo Cimino, who sadly passed away in 2012, but what a great performance he gives here.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely fantastic in this movie, I have to say. I think he's also, for me, involved in one of the most sort of emotional scenes in the film, which we may get to later. But then Phoebe meets Frank at the Riverside in a direct homage to a similar but slightly more tragic moment in the original Frankenstein film. She has a few throwaway lines of dialogue in the script which aren't used, and I think the scene is actually better for it. Back to Scary German Guy, and the scene begins with a nice little fake out that is missing from both scripts. Scary German Guy brandishes a glistening knife and utters the words, "Time is almost up."
It's your last chance for pie. It turns out, in Horace's own words, Scary German Guy's bitching. Most of this scene survives intact, although a knock knock joke that doesn't quite land has been removed.
It's a nice little scene offering up both, a ton of useful exposition and also offering the squad a trusted mentor figure in the form of Scary German Guy.
On the way back from Scary German Guy, the squad discuss the ritual and the need for a virgin. This differs from both versions of the script, where none of the boys actually know what a virgin is. Either way, thus they ask Rudy, leading to his spit take in the diner, which beautifully match cuts into stones hitting the lake.
Back at the treehouse, Phoebe introduces the boys to her new friend Frank. After a momentary lapse in courage, Sean racks up the nerve to introduce himself. There are a couple of moments omitted from the script here, which I quite like. In the first draft, when Sean asks Frank if he's dead, the monster replies, "Don't want to be," which is absolutely heartbreakingly.
Oh man, Frank just he just tugs your heart all the way through. I mean, both scripts also feature a really nice moment where Frank almost breaks Sean's hand when shaking it and is just absolutely mortified with guilt afterwards.
Although Frank does still knock Sean over when clapping him on the back, which, is a really nice touch. So after this initial meeting, the now fully assembled squad debrief in the treehouse. This scene is near identical to the scripts until the part where Frank unwittingly snaps a photo of Patrick's sister. In both drafts of the script, the squad set out at night with the sole purpose of scoring some nudies with which to blackmail her into being their virgin on demand. And thankfully, this wasn't filmed, as this could definitely have soured some memories of this, beloved classic. The scene ends with a gorgeous, gorgeous silhouette shot of the squad and Frank walking into the sunset, which is just beautiful.
Oh, it is. I wish that the film could have ended with that shot. If that shot had been at the end, maybe we should just like resplice the film and just put that bit at the end. It would have just made things so
I think we might
much
be able to
like,
do that, Lee, somewhere.
yeah, I'm sure someone probably has. But anyway, back to the creepy house on Shadowbrook Road. and Dracula finally locates the amulet buried deep beneath the house. Now, in the first draft of the script, it's actually sealed in a huge metal vault, which is going to need some serious firepower to open. And there's a little variation from the script here, but in the third draft, Dracula is stopped just short of claiming the amulet as the sun rises and prevents him from reaching it. But either way, the scene segues nicely into a motherfucking montage.
Oh, and it's a great 80s montage, isn't it, Lee? It's upbeat, there's BMXs, you know, time saving. And it's accompanied by some real kind of toe tapping tunes. It's absolutely fantastic. It plays out largely unchanged, save for Rudy discovering the photo of Patrick's sister, leading to his second spit take of the movie. You can never have too many spit takes. Both versions of the script also feature Sean loading his father's revolver with silver bullets. And these are silver bullets that Rudy has made in shop class, Lee.
Yeah, see, I know nothing about the American education system and probably even less about guns, but can you actually make bullets in shop class? Is that something they do there?
Apparently, it's something they do, but it all makes sense because he sneaks them out in his cigarette pack.
Oh man, shop class rules.
Also, here it's interesting to take note of Eugene's crayon written note to the army because that will be important later.
Indeed, it will. While the squad prep for the big showdown, we check in on Dracula, who has Wolfman's human form tied up and seemingly drugged out of his mind to keep him docile. Dracula excuses himself and heads off to the pantry to dine on some young girls.
Now, this scene is largely unchanged from the first draft, although Dracula's dining on the girls is missing here. The third draft adds more dialogue about how Frank has failed him and how it was Wolfman who abducted the girls for him to feed upon. One could argue omitting this dialogue helps to keep the Wolfman as a much more kind of sympathetic character.
Del Crenshaw gets a call from the errant Wolfman, who tries in vain to warn him about Dracula's plan and that he intends to kill his son. We get a smooth, invisible cut and a pretty epic werewolf transformation here. There are some minor dialogue changes here, but both versions of the script, it's made clear that the Wolfman phones Crenshaw intentionally, asking for him by name. I guess it's still implied in the actual film that he knows who Crenshaw is, but to me, it's not quite as clear he's phoning him specifically, you know?
Yeah, yeah. No, understood. I mean, either way, though, Lee, the stage is set and the squad is go. Sean, Horace, Eugene, and Frank head for Shadowbrook Road while Patrick and Rudy set out to entice Patrick's sister to the cause. We get another look at the criminally underused Gillman here as the creature makes off with Eugene's Twinkie. The Gillman scene is missing from the first draft, but otherwise it's pretty close to the mark.
Yeah, the first draft script has a really interesting scene here where Dracula steals a truck of dynamite and evades the cops, only to be spotted by the Monster Squad and pursued by them to Shadowbrook Road. I guess, if nothing else, it explains his fixation with dynamite for the rest of the movie.
He does have a strange sort of seeming fetish around dynamite
He
throughout
does,
this
but
whole
it's
film.
because in the first draft, the vault is like sealed in like a big iron vault. The amulet,
Yeah,
sorry, is in a big iron vault. So he needs the dynamite to get into it. But
I
they kind of
see.
took that out and kept the dynamite.
It all becomes clear.
Yeah.
So, anyway, after this, it falls to Rudy and Patrick to convince his sister to help them. She isn't keen, but Rudy is quick to flash the revealing photo, which in the modern age of Blu-ray quality definition is clearly not the picture taken, Frank. But in the scripts, there's a nice bonding scene with Patrick and his sister, leading to Rudy actually burning the negatives and her agreeing to help them regardless. It's kind of a shame this scene wasn't left in, but for the purposes of pacing, I can understand why it was cut. So I did want to sort of just run through the scene as it appears on the page here, Lee. So
Yeah.
I'll just run through that now. So she swipes for the envelope, but Rudy holds it away. Then the strangest thing happens. Not strange if you think about it, but strange to Rudy and Patrick. Patrick's sister turns away and starts to cry. Through her tears, Patrick's sister, that's really shitty. Rudy, whoa, hey, chill out. Patrick, we need your help, okay? It's important. I would have asked, but you'd say no. Patrick's sister, how do you know? What about the night I was babysitting and mum and dad said you couldn't stay up for creature features, but I let you anyway? Pause. Patrick looks to the ground. Patrick's sister, through tears. You took advantage of me. You didn't ask me to help. You didn't even try. She walks away. Rudy and Patrick look at one another guiltily. Rudy, hey. Patrick's sister turns around. Rudy takes out his cigarette lighter, holds it up to the envelope, and lights it. He drops the burning negative to the ground. Long pause. Patrick's sister, I suppose you think now I'll help you. Rudy makes a face so endearingly helpless and sensitive, even we don't know if he's bullshitting. That's a really lovely scene, I think.
Yeah, I wish they'd kept that in. I think it's a really nice scene. Anyway, Sean, Horace, and Eugene head with Frank into the house on Shadowbrook Lane. There's a few dialogue changes from the first draft, but otherwise it's pretty spot on with what's written down in the third draft of the script.
Now things really kick into high gear. Frank and the boys enter the house only for Frank to be KO'd by debris from the dynamite blast. They are then set upon by Wolfman, only for Horace to disable him with a well-placed nut shot, leading to the now infamous line, Wolfman's got nards, which is also the name of a cracking documentary by Andre Gower on cult movies and the Monster Squad itself. It's an amazing documentary.
It's great. It was great. In the original script, Frank is actually taken out outside of the house by a falling tree. Interestingly, in both drafts of the script, it is here that the boys encounter a mysterious stranger, claiming to be descended from Van Helsing himself. Ultimately, it proves to be Dracula, but originally this part was going to be played by a largely unknown actor you probably wouldn't have heard of called Liam Neeson. Ultimately, the scene was never filmed, but Neeson was apparently still paid for the role, so great to go, Liam. There's a really cool moment near the end of the scene where Horace pulls a major look moment to save Sean from Dracula.
Back to the film, and the boys flee through the house, only to be pursued by the brides, Wolfman, and of course Dracula himself. They escape by dropping through a hidden trapdoor in some serious Deus Ex plotting.
Then we get a quick check in with Rudy and Patrick as they wait with Patrick's sister at Phil's diner.
So then it's back to the creepy house, and as fortune would have it, Lee, the boys have landed smack bang next to the amulet, wouldn't you know? Sean wastes little time in retrieving it, but is immediately set upon by Dracula. And Horace, God, we love you, Horace, saves the day with some garlic pizza to the face, and they flee the house. Now, in the first draft of the script, this scene is part of the Wolfman's Nards escape scene, which also features a pretty cool alligator pit. But the main difference is that Dracula grabs Horace in the first draft. It's nice that instead of saving himself, Horace was able to show his heroic side, I think, here, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Horace, I think, apart from Eugene, Horace is like given the least amount of time to shine, I think. So it's nice for him to get a good little scene and an alligator pit. I think every movie needs an alligator pit, to be honest.
Well, I mean,
You know,
what movie is not improved by an alligator pit?
exactly, exactly. So the boys flee the house and are met by Phoebe and scary German guy. Rudy, Patrick, and his sister arrive a moment later. We get a quick plot recap, and then we're away to church. Why church? Because monsters hate religious stuff. This is pretty spot on with what's written in the third draft, and I think I'd probably put the start of Act 3 about here. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in two minds with this. I mean, I thought when I was rewatching the film, Act Three probably like really started after the tool up montage. You know, everyone knows what they're facing and what they have to do, and we sort of enter the third act where they attempt to save the world. But you know, that said, I mean, you could well be right. I mean, I think either way, it's these things are up for debate. You know, they're quite subjective, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, anyway, there's a scene where Dell and Sapir head to their police cruiser to check out the werewolf call. Turns out dropping some unsubtle threats about a man's son is usually enough to get him in the game. In both versions of the script, Dell recruits the rookie cop who shot the Wolfman earlier, and he recruits him instead of Sapir. As the squad speeds into town, the mummy appears in the road. Scary German guy swerves, but the wrapped up wretch manages to grab onto the back of the vehicle, T1000 style, and lunges for Phoebe, not Phoebe. But Pete the dog starts yanking on a loose bandage, and Rudy ties one end to an arrow and, like a goddamn hero, shoots it into a tree, unraveling that dusty bastard, and he dies.
Again, yeah. Well, this is much tenser in the scripts. I mean, in the first draft of the script, the mummy is shown to be incredibly strong. He's like punching holes in the car, and in both drafts, he actually grabs Sean and throws him out of the car. He just kind of holds onto the roll bars, and bit of reckless child endangerment. Who doesn't love a bit of that? I think it's a shame the mummy wasn't made out to be a little bit more intimidating, to be honest. He's kind of a joke in the movie, I think. He literally is just there to look cool, and that's about it.
He doesn't do a
But
great deal,
anyway,
does he?
no, he doesn't. But he does look cool. I'll
He
give
does
him
look
that.
very cool. He moves kind of cool as well. I like the way he moves.
Yeah, he does move really well. But still, Rudy 1, Monsters 0.
So Dell and Sapir are speeding to the scene when Dracula's hearse appears ahead, moving on an intercept course. And for some reason, despite having all the time in the world, the cops don't switch lanes, seemingly happy to face their inevitable death. But thankfully, Dracula's ride is spectral and simply passes straight through them, after which they then decide to swerve.
It always makes me laugh, that scene in the movie. It's just, but it does play out slightly differently in the scripts. In the first draft, Dracula simply drives past the other car in the other lane, and in the third draft, Dracula passes through a roadblock on the way to Crenshaw's house, which causes him to change course when he hears about it on the radio.
There's a nice scene in the Crenshaw house here where Emily sees the candle she gave to Phoebe to keep her safe snuff out in the wind. So some foreshadowing of bad things which are about to go down.
Oh, and go down they are. Dracula pulls up outside, takes out the Crenshaw's nice white picket fence just out of pure spite because he can, then rips the back door off his hearse and pulls out, yeah, you guessed it, a wad of dynamite. This version of Dracula does not fuck about. He promptly nukes the Monster Squad treehouse, and in the first draft of the script, he also takes out the Crenshaw's house as well.
Oh, he's an evil son of a bitch, isn't he, that Dracula? Who takes out a picket fence? So Dell arrives and Dracula promptly blows up the squad car. In both versions of the script, the rookie cop survives, but in the movie, unfortunately, time is up for poor Detective Sapir. I guess somebody we weren't invested in had to die and up the stakes, no pun intended. And,
Hey,
the dice came up Sapir, unfortunately, on this one.
yeah. Dell puts 4 rounds in Dracula in response, who simply smiles, lets him know he's off to murder his firstborn son before turning into bat form and flying away. Dell grabs a walkie-talkie from the house and learns where Sean is and where he's going.
The squad make it to town, but it's 20 to midnight. And God damn it, the church is closed, Lee. Can you believe that?
I know, 20 to midnight. What church closes at 20 to midnight? Unbelievable.
The brides of Dracula are the first to arrive, and Rudy steps up to take them out. In the script, this scene is spread out somewhat, and it's made clear that he must use stakes, not arrows, which is why he fumbles enough on screen for the second vampire to grab him. Ultimately, though, Rudy wins out. Rudy 3, Monsters 1, Lee.
Nice. Now, interesting, we never actually see the third bride perish. Rudy only sort of kills 2 of them on screen. But the director has said in interviews that he shot the scene of him staking the final bride of Dracula, but forgot to edit it into the final film.
It's easy to forget these things, I think. So at this point, Dracula swoops in, literally in bat form. But in a moment of pure badassery, Dell screeches onto the scene, driving one-handed whilst pumping Bat Drac full of lead. Human Dracula may be immune to bullets, but his bat form doesn't appear to be quite so lucky, and Drac crashes into a sporting goods store, and Dell, dynamite in hand, sets off to finish the job.
Nice. Dell locates Dracula painfully caught mid-transformation in a really, really sick visual. He lights a stick of dynamite, but the Wolfman has other ideas, and it's Sean to the rescue as father and son overcome the Wolfman, shove the dynamite down his pants, and kick him out the window. Boom. Wolfman's nards are now everywhere, along with the rest of it.
Dell's beatdown is a little more brutal in the script, but otherwise things play out pretty similar in both drafts and on screen. But you can't keep a good Wolfman down, Lee. As we all know, there's only one way to kill a werewolf, and the furry fiend quickly reassembles itself. Meanwhile, we discover Patrick's sister isn't quite as pure as we thought, and the ritual proves unsuccessful.
Oh dear. Well, meanwhile, the reformed Wolfman goes on a rampage, taking out the rookie cop that shot him earlier and a bunch of others in some glorious PG-13 brutality. In the scripts, it is here that Sapir actually meets his end, quite literally torn to pieces by a feral Wolfman.
Oh, brutal. The end plays the same. Rudy retrieves a fallen officer's gun, loads it with a silver bullet, and bang, only one way to kill a werewolf. The dying human thanks Rudy for ending his suffering, which I thought was really quite touching, actually.
That was a cool little scene. Anyway, it's Rudy 4, Monsters 1. But just like as a quick aside, I think and Rudy is a badass and all, but surely this poor kid is going to be like in for a life of therapy after all this, just like hapless murder in one night.
I think it's, I think it's all repelled by his leather jacket, Lee. I think it just bounces off him like Teflon. But anyway, we're back in, and Eugene gives Scary German Guy the idea to use Phoebe as the verbal virgin. Meanwhile, the Gillman arrives. Come on, Gillman. And after some more softcore violence, goes straight for Horace, who grabs a gun and hightails it to a nearby diner. But his old bullies, EJ and Derek, those little wankers, are inside and won't open the door for love nor money. Horace heroically guns down the Gill man and is congratulated by his former bullies, who still call him Fat Kidley. Unbelievable behavior. This leads to arguably the greatest scene in movie history.
My name is Horace. Love that scene. Love that scene so much.
Classic.
The third draft plays it almost to the letter, although it takes Horace 2 shots to drop the Gill man. In the original draft, the Gill man is unceremoniously gunned down by cops, and Horace simply just comments on how bad it smells. I think we can all agree that this was definitely changed for the better.
Oh, come on. It's a stand up and applaud in the cinema moment.
It's a Captain America lifting Mjolnir moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. Anyway, as it stands, it's Rudy 4, Horace 1, Monsters 1.
Plus a shit ton of cops.
Yeah, of course, but we don't count them. Dracula's back on the scene now, and he is pissed, literally crackling with electricity. He dispatches a swath of cops before Hadoukening Scary German Guy. After a delightfully tender moment, he hefts poor Phoebe up by the chops and says the immortal line, "Give me the amulet, you bitch." What the hell? Now, this scene was infamously captured in a single take, and actor Duncan Rhaegar normally avoided wearing his red contacts or fangs around 5-year-old Ashley Bank because they frightened her. As the scene was filmed, Ashley's scream of terror when Dracula opens his eyes was completely genuine. But interesting. I mean, it's lovely to hear because Bank has said that she has really fond memories of the scene and actually the whole experience. So it's really lovely to hear that.
I remember reading a quote from her saying that she was really happy that she got to say the word chicken shit at one point and she was allowed to swear. In the movie's greatest audience cheer moment, Frank arrives just in time to save Phoebe and backhand Dracula under some iron fencing. Bogus. In the original script, Dracula is struck by a flying statue and then tries to destroy Phoebe and the amulet together in a single blow. And Frank catches his hand and then backhands him into a church and impales him on a crucifix. But either way, under Frank's protection, Phoebe finishes the incantation and boom, the portal to Limbo opens.
Now, everything nearby is getting sucked in. So it's cops, it's corpses, and obviously Dracula himself is getting sucked in now. But of course, this spiteful old bastard isn't going alone. He told Dell he'd have his son, and what's a vampire if not loyal to his word? He snatches up Sean, and the two are sucked towards the void, locked in mortal combat.
Sean manages to stake Dracula, but it's only with Van Helsing's help that Dracula is dragged into the void. And this is much more brutal than the scripts. In the script, Sean is trying to like gouge out Dracula's eyes. Dracula is like throttling him till he turns blue. And in the script, Sean actually ends up stabbing Dracula through the throat with his lightning rod cane. He kind of grabs it, presses the switch, and it just goes straight through Dracula's neck, which is kind of cool.
Anyway, it's heartbreak time now, unfortunately, as Frank also succumbs to the void, but not before Phoebe throws him her beloved Mr. Scraps, accompanied by some heartrending orchestrals. Man, this broke my heart as a kid. I was really like hoping for a Goonies style ending where Frank was just adopted into the family. But honestly, like this scene pretty much plays out identical to the script.
Nice. The void closes and the chaos has ended. The Crenshaws embrace, reunited as a family. Rudy makes a seemingly successful move on Patrick's sister, and lo and behold, the army arrives in response to young Eugene's letter.
So a grizzled general turns up on the scene and asks who can explain what's going on. Who indeed, Lee? The Monster Squad.
Oh, yeah.
All in line with the script here, although Horace does get some adoration on the page that isn't actually on the screen, which is a shame.
Yeah. But before you check out, though, I highly recommend you sit through the credits of the film and listen to the Monster Squad rap, because I guarantee it is the best thing you will listen to today.
So there you have it, Lee. Monster Squad, total banger.
Oh man, I cannot stress enough the influence this movie had on me as a kid.
Yeah, I said before, I mean, I can remember me and my sister renting this on VHS and like you said, I mean, looking at the amazing cover and just it was, it was such a lot of fun to watch. And I honestly don't recall finding it particularly scary, but I love the tone and thought it was just an amazingly enjoyable film to watch.
Absolutely, man. I mean, when I was but a nipper, like this and The Lost Boys pretty much shaped me for better or worse into the man I am today. I mean, my friends and I, we started our own monster club. We called ourselves the Monster Kids, not very original, but we managed to avoid copyright, I guess. And yeah, we used to explore the local forest, like this old ruined derelict fort, derelict railways. We used to just trek along, armed with sharpened cricket stumps and some fake silverware in search of monsters. Oh man, we would scare ourselves half to death. It was good times. I remember one time I got in trouble at home for throwing garlic into the central heating vents to protect us from vampires, and our house stunk like a French rotisserie for weeks afterwards.
I feel
My mum was not happy.
I feel all of this lets me know so much more about you, Lee. It really illuminates me as to how you've become the person that you are these days.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the movie was released August 14th, 1987, and honestly, at the time, it was considered something of a flop. The budget was about $13 million, and it only managed 3.8 million at the box office worldwide.
Ouch.
Yeah, man.
I think maybe the film was probably a bit too scary for kids and probably not scary enough for adults. So I don't know, maybe it kind of got stuck in a sort of limbo between the two, where one was too young and one was too old. I don't know, but it was quite a tough shoot as well.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, because most of the film is set at night, and obviously there's regulations limiting how late young actors can work. The children's scenes were filmed for about 3 hours each evening, while the rest of the crew continued working, late into the night. Filming, which lasted 50 days or so, went a week over schedule, with around 10 nights dedicated solely to filming that finale.
Oh, what a finale it was, though.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, man. All the cast, I mean, as we said earlier, all the cast, especially the kids at the time, have really fond memories of the shoot. So, despite it being nights, they all loved what they were doing.
Yeah, I bet. I bet it genuinely warms my heart that this film is so highly thought of now. I mean, I still have the big box VHS sleeve framed on my living room wall from the it was the copy I always used to hire out as a kid. And when the video store closed down, I kind of brought the video cassette, and then a couple of years ago, I kind of found it. And obviously, no one has video players anymore, so I just kind of took the sleeve off and kind of framed it, and now it has like a pride of place in my living room. But I always really loved the tagline on the cover, which was like, you know who to call when you have ghosts, but who do you call when you have monsters? I thought that was
Yeah,
really
such a
cool.
classic, such a classic cover that was. That's one of the things that really stands out in my memory is seeing that cover. Anyway, speaking of the titular monsters, because of rights issues, some of the characters had to be noticeably changed from their Universal monster equivalents. Most notably, the creature from the Black Lagoon became the Gill Man, and Frankenstein's monster's infamous bolts were relocated from his neck to his head.
Hmm. Maybe he had like a screw top cap to access his brain, maybe something like
One
that.
needs access.
So, I mean, what do you think were the scariest moments in the film?
I think for me, the scariest moments in the film were actually the crazy man werewolf guy. And, probably, I mean, there's this moment in the police station and then obviously in the phone box transformation. But I mean, the actual guy is played by John Grise or Grease, and is absolutely like, particularly in the police station, is absolutely selling this moment. He's really like putting it out there and begging to be locked up. And I mean, this scene and that performance, it totally would be, in place. It wouldn't be out of place in a hard hitting 70s crime thriller. It's a total standout performance as Desperate Man.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. I mean, he's almost out of place in this otherwise, let's be honest, somewhat campy masterpiece.
Yeah.
Um, I think my scariest moment is probably the Vampire Brides. I mean, we don't really get to see Dracula vamp out until almost the end of the film. And I think seeing those three girls, those three scared girls turned into just bloodthirsty death hags, definitely freaked me out a little bit as a kid.
Well, it's the old corruption of innocence, isn't it, Lee? It's one of the key themes of horror. Now, we spoke earlier about Shane Black and his screenwriting style. What would you say are the key elements that make a Shane Black script, Lee?
Well, I think Black leans hard into the fact that he's writing a document. That I mean, that sounds weird. Let me elaborate a little bit. You and I, we've been taught that a screenplay is a thing that wants to be something else, right? So we,
Hmm.
we write a script, we write it with the intention of it being a blueprint for a movie or a TV show or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like a technical document, it's written in a certain way with a certain format.
Yeah, absolutely. And Black does this, formatting everything is by the book, but he writes in such an engaging way that the reader genuinely enjoys the script. Like it's a fun read, and so by extension, you assume that it will be a fun film as well. I think I think the best way I can describe it is like it's like you're not reading a script so much as you are an account of an old buddy telling you a story. Black is renowned for his buddy cop dynamics, and in his scripts, that's kind of exactly what he does. He makes the reader part of a duo, like you and he are in this together, and he's got your back no matter what, you know?
So yeah, in a way, he's manipulating the reader into feeling an attachment with the story, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, and I think it's genius, absolute genius.
Yeah, I mean, I was reflecting after reading this, and although Black sticks to a lot of the traditional formatting, as you mentioned, the way he breaks the fourth wall in terms of communicating directly with the reader, it really goes against the grain of what you're generally taught to do in screenwriting, right? And so I plucked a few examples of this from the script just to illustrate this. And this is from the cargo plane sequence from quite early in the film, and this is directly from the script. So it says exterior cargo plane dusk. A battered old twin prop plane chugs along through the twilight sky. Time to switch gears because the scary part is next. So it's strange, isn't it? I mean, he is kind of
Mm.
genuinely jumping out the story, out the moment to kind of communicate directly with the
Yeah.
audience. And then the last example here is slightly different. And it's just to illustrate how Black goes about describing the effect he's after. And this is from where Phoebe introduces Frank to the squad for the first time. And so Phoebe says, "Would you look?" Everyone looks. As the Frankenstein monster steps out from behind the tree, for a moment, time seems to stand still. Okay, here's the effect we're going for. The kids do not run away. We do not see them move. Rather, they simply appear on the other side of the lawn, as far away as possible, and still have the same zip code. So certainly, breaking some rules, and you could debate whether this is innovating or more or less engaging, but he's certainly doing things that generally you wouldn't be doing, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the thing is, he's made this style his own. I mean, I'd love to try and write a script in this style, but I'm afraid I'd just be labeled as trying to imitate Shane Black, And I think it's a shame more scripts aren't this enjoyable to read, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I mean, another thing Black is known for is his ability to balance humor and tension, right? And he'll have you on the edge of your seat and then sort of drop in a little humor to let you breathe before, dragging you right back in to the edge again. And one thing we also wanted to chat about generally is the manner in which screenwriters introduce their characters in the scripts. Intros can be, they can be either quite pithy and short, or they can be sort of much longer or more ponderous. But it's great to look at how screenwriters go about making these moments inspiring for directors or cinematographers or production designers, and obviously for the actors as well. And then, how those translate into memorable scenes for viewers of the final film. So, as an example of this, Lee, we picked out how Black introduces Dracula in the Monster Squad script. And this is from the third draft that we've been referencing a little bit. And so this is directly from the script. Interior bowels of Castle Dracula, dead of night. 12th century stone arches, mist, rats squeaking and scampering across the floor, armadillos in the shadows of coffins. That's right, coffins, 3 of them. As the camera glides across the stone floor, one of the coffins begins to open, and we catch a glimpse of a chalk white hand at its edge as one of the other coffins begins opening. Creak. And another hand, female, from inside. As we move to the third coffin, on which is emblazoned a finely wrought gold crest. And right when we think that coffin is going to open, he's really making a meal of this, right, at the moment.
Oh, yeah,
And what the
absolutely.
hell's Armadillo's doing there? I've got no idea, but
I was thinking
who
that. Yeah.
cares?
Yeah.
Anyway, he carries on, crane up to the ceiling of this dank chamber, and there, in the cobweb shadows, are a million glittering lights like diamonds, except what they actually are is a million eyes, because the ceiling is covered with disgusting bats, all suspended upside down. And don't ask what kind of bats, because you know better than that now, don't you? Series of shots exploring the full range of bat slumber as they twitch and gibber and do bat things. And trust us, rodent fans will be camping out next to the theatre. But now something else is happening, because we see that slowly, with increasing fervour, the bats are becoming agitated, chittering and screeching, then flapping their wings in a growing frenzy, shrieking and flapping away from a particular bat. In the center, a real beaut too, with eyes brilliant pinpoints of red. And then we notice, amidst the thunder and keening of terrified bats, that this one specific bat is growing. He vibrates and twitches, stretches and distends. And you better close your eyes here, because, get this, he starts to split open, becoming longer and bigger, and yes, undeniably more human, as the other bats really go nuts now. And on the cellar floor, a pair of feet, naked human feet, hit the floor with a slap, and a naked human man rises slowly, tall, lean, seemingly unaffected by the storm of bats screeching and flapping all around him. For the record, Vlad the Impaler was a Roman prince whose hobby was violent murder, but that was hundreds of years ago. Now he's your basic, run-of-the-mill, undead personification of evil. No blood in his face, plenty in his eyes. There are eyes you never want to look directly into. He moves across the cellar, past the other 2 coffins, which are open and empty, to an iron torch holder with a pressed tuxedo on a hanger. He reaches for a long black cape. How about that, Lee?
Wow. That is pretty epic. I think the standout from all that for me is the no blood in his face, plenty in his eyes. If I
Oh,
had
that's
to
great.
if I had to just summarize all that into like just one line, I think that would be what I would use. No blood in his face, plenty in his eyes. That's a
Yeah,
great one.
fantastic.
I mean, my favorite introduction is probably going to be the introduction of poor lovable Horace. It's interesting because for a start, Black tells us straight away directly how we should feel about the kid, and then reinforces it with visual tells to his personality. I mean, I'll read it for you here. Enter Fat Kid. We love him instantly. So straight away, he tells you we love him.
Yeah.
So you gotta love him too. And you have to love someone who tries so hard to be liked and fails so spectacularly. See, you can't not love him after that. And then we get a little bit of what show don't tell. He looks up from A, reading a comic book, B, chewing an almond joy bar, and C, pulling his underwear out of his butt. I mean, that's just such a great
It's
that's just
fantastic.
such a great intro.
It
Yeah.
is fantastic. And like you say, you know exactly how you're supposed to feel about this character.
Mhm.
And you know so much from the character about what he's doing. And, it just absolutely sums him up perfectly.
It does.
Okay, Lee. So That's fantastic. So what are your sort of what's your standout from the film?
Only one?
Yeah, those are the rules. We just one standout.
Oh man, I mean, for me, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, it's Duncan Regehr's Dracula.
Yeah, what is it about this Dracula that appeals to you so much, do you think?
I mean, he's just such a magnificent bastard, you know. I mean, like from threatening miners to like dynamiting tree houses, he's just evil as fuck. But he carries himself with such a delightful sense of arrogance, you know. I mean, he struts around in probably the most cliched Dracula outfit ever put on screen, and he just kills it every time, every scene he's in. But, how about you, man? I mean, what's your standout?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got to say as well, Dracula is just absolutely outstanding in this. He's fantastic. But I think for me, the thing that really stood out for me on rewatching was just to do the amazing quality of the suits and the special makeup effects in general. You know, I was really surprised how great the suits for the monsters were. You know, Gilman, Frank, Wolfman, the Mummy, just how well they held up. You know, even after all these years, and they look fantastic. And that's not to mention the general sort of quality of the practical effects and the puppetry on display as well. But yeah, I know we touched on it earlier. These suits are just they're so good, you know. Yeah, so Matt Rose, Steve Wang, Stan Winston Studios absolutely smashed it, Lee. Okay, man. So off the cuff, you know, what did we both learn from this?
Oh man, I mean, I think for me, I think it's just seeing Black's style, how he involves the reader in the script and just kind of makes you feel an affinity with it. You know, I think that's obviously we can't like just straight up copy his style, but I'm sure there's got to be ways that you can kind of initiate the reader and kind of bring them into a bit more of an intimate relationship with you, you know, when they're reading a script.
Mm,
You know, that's something I want to sort of try and do in the future, but without outright aping Shane
yeah,
Black's style. And I think another thing is it's you hear that old screenwriting adage, you know, if you want to do something new, just take two genres and mash them up, or take
yeah,
two films and kind of mash them together. And I mean, and this is basically Goonies meets Dracula,
yeah,
you know, just mash that together, and you get an amazing film out of it. It's just genius. It's such a great idea, and it just
yeah.
makes you wonder how many other great ideas are out there, how many great genre mashups are out there just waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think like it's honestly like the same thing. Like it was just such fun, like reading this script, you know. I mean, I predominantly read the sort of the third draft, but Shane Black as a writer just has this style, right? That's just kind of jumping out of a traditional kind of script style that you would sort of be taught or you would be, you know, sort of told that this is how you have to write a screenplay.
Yeah,
And he does it to engage the reader, you know, to make the sort of reading of a script less dry, less stale, kind of less boring. You know, he's really, and a lot of it I think is about tone. You know, it's about the tone of the piece, and it tells you so much about what he's wanting you to kind of feel and the sort of film that it's going to be. Like you say, you can't really ape that style because
yeah,
you'll probably be laughed out the room or you'll be sort of just, you know, branded as a Shane Black kind of copier, you know. But
yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's things from that you can take, you know, maybe not so much involving kind of breaking the fourth wall, but you know, some of the sort of pithier, shorter sentences, some of the things that you can do to maybe involve the reader in a way to make the thing more entertaining to actually just read as almost like a standalone piece, you know.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I think for me, that's mainly what I sort of learned is that you can make scripts enjoyable to read. They don't have to be these sort of dry, slightly stale kind of pieces of prose. You know, they can
yeah.
really engage you. You know.
Mm. And we're kind of, you know, we're writing sort of spec scripts, for example, which obviously we all do and we all will, and you know, we want them to be sold. You know, something like that is going to be a good way to make them more memorable. You know, and that's what we want. We want the stuff we write to be memorable because we're out there in a sea of other other people and other scripts, and we
Yeah.
want ours noticed. We all do. We all want our work to kind of just rise above the others just that little bit. Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe something like that will help do that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's at the time, I imagine when he was sort of first coming onto the scene, there was an originality there, and I'm
Yeah,
sure he's been sort of, like you say, aped through the years to the point where you kind of know exactly what someone's trying to do if they're writing in a certain in this kind of style. But yeah, man, I still think there's loads to take from it in terms of engaging the reader and how you can go about sort of doing that. And also there's a lot to be said about the kind of rules of screenwriting as well, that I've read so many scripts that seem to kind of break the rules of what you're kind of taught as a screenwriter, both in
yeah,
terms of formatting and in terms of how you're sort of telling the story and the point of view and the some of the wording that you're using and that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot to learn from sort of reading this sort of script, I think. And it's also quite
yeah.
inspiring, it's just fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the general consensus, that I've sort of picked up is like once you get there, once you've made it, you can break as many rules as you want. But until
Yeah.
you get there, you got to blend in with the sheep and still rise above the herd somehow.
And I think there's something about knowing the rules and being able to subvert them rather than
Yeah,
not
yeah,
knowing the rules and just sort of doing it, because you
absolutely.
don't know, right, out of ignorance. But anyway, so there we are. That's the Monster Squad. Really enjoyed that, Lee. What's next on the schedule? What's up next time?
Okay, so next time we're looking at another 80s classic and quite possibly my favorite movie of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing. We'll be rewatching the movie and comparing it to the second draft of the excellent screenplay written by Bill Lancaster.
Nice. I can't wait to dive into this one, Lee. I love the thing.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I watched it obviously recently but it's a film I could I could literally just sit and watch it every day for the rest of my life and I would never get bored of it. It's so good.
Oh, it's fantastic. I can't wait to dive into that. So it's time now for a little bit of shameless self-promotion. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit like and subscribe, and please check out our sort of social media pages as well.
We will also have links to the scripts we've looked at in the show notes. So if you haven't read them, I highly recommend doing so. And if you haven't watched the film recently, go back and enjoy the film.
Absolutely. So until next time, folks, take care.
And keep writing those scares.